Hello friends, I am glad to see you again. Today I will tell you about the homeowners association that wants me to join them. It started with a yellow envelope stuffed awkwardly into my rural mailbox. No postage, just shoved in there like an angry note on a windshield. Inside waited a glossy trifold brochure for something calling itself Oak Grove Meadows Residential Association. The cover showed a smiling couple walking a designer dog past identical vinyl-sided cottages. On the back, in red ink, someone had scrawled my full name next to an overdue balance of $600. The thing is, I don't live in a subdivision. My place is a 10-acre rectangle of second-growth hardwood forest at the dead end of a county road. No streetlights, no curbs, no picket fences. Exactly why I bought it 14 months earlier after selling my downtown condo. The county plat map calls it Tract 4B, not Oak Grove Meadows Lot 117, so the brochure felt more like a prank than an invoice. Still, curiosity trumped irritation. I dialed the phone number printed under the HOA logo. After 3 rings, a woman who introduced herself as Mary Beth Administrative Facilitator greeted me with the forced politeness of someone who laminates inspirational quotes. I told her the parcel number and asked why I was suddenly on their roster. "Oh!" She sounded thrilled, like we were long-lost cousins. "Your property is within Oak Grove Meadows' sphere of benefit. Please remit your initiation fee by the 1st of next month." "Sphere of benefit?" I repeated, because some phrases deserve an echo. "Our covenants extend 1 mile beyond the platted subdivision lines," she said. Section 7, paragraph 3. "You're automatically a member." "That's not how real property works," I replied, pulling the deed from my filing cabinet while we talked. "The previous owner granted no easements, and there's zero mention of HOA covenants in the title search." There was a pause, papers shuffled, then her voice tightened. "Sir, you may be in violation already by using your parcel without architectural approval. I'm camping on my own land and clearing a spot for a workshop. That constitutes structural improvement," she inhaled sharply. "I'll escalate this to our compliance committee. Expect a site inspection." I ended the call before my blood pressure did something regrettable. Enter subplot number 1, my neighbor, a genial Army retiree named Dex, whose land flanks my western fence. An hour after the phone call, Dex rolled up in his mud-splattered UTV, hauling a chainsaw and a cooler full of lemonade. I relayed the HOA nonsense while we trimmed storm-fallen branches. Dex hooted so loudly a crow flapped from an oak. "Those folks tried the same stunt on me last year," he said. "They claimed the original developer intended to buy all these outlying tracts and never followed through. Pure fantasy." "So what did you do?" He grinned, revealing the gap from a missing molar. "Told them step 1 was to set foot on my land so I could charge them with trespass. Haven't heard back." I wished I possessed Dex's unshakable confidence, but a certified letter can rattle even stubborn souls. That night, under the glow of my campfire, I drafted a timeline in a spiral notebook. Purchase date, zoning confirmation, survey markers. I attached copies of the warranty deed like battle maps. If Oak Grove Meadows wanted a fight, they would get one. And I love a courtroom showdown almost as much as I love the smell of burning hickory. The next escalation arrived via certified mail 3 weeks later. This envelope carried official letterhead topped with an embossed oak leaf. Inside lay a notice of unauthorized land use, supported by 57 pages of photocopied covenants. The cover sheet alleged that by clearing underbrush I had altered native vegetation in violation of Landscape Guideline 4.2 and was therefore subject to a daily fine of $200. The HOA president's signature, one Silas, looked like a jagged seismograph line. His closing paragraph chilled me. "We note your failure to submit an application for membership. If no response is received within 15 days, Oak Grove Meadows will pursue injunctive relief to prevent further encroachment." Encroachment on my own acreage. I drove to the county recorder's office the following morning with a travel mug of gasoline-strength coffee. Miss Pennington, the recorder, knows every plat dating back to 1910. She pulled the microfilm for my tract and the subdivision. Sure enough, the Oak Grove Meadows boundary ended 600 feet from my northeast corner. No liens, no overlapping deeds, no master covenants filed countywide. Miss Pennington leaned over the counter and whispered, "They're blowing smoke, but they're loud. Bring your earplugs." She also handed me contact info for a property rights attorney, Calvin Briscoe, a tall, silver-haired fellow rumored to enjoy 3-hour lunch breaks and quoting case law mid-sentence. I scheduled a consultation for the next Tuesday. Meanwhile, subplot number 2 emerged. My girlfriend Harper, who lives 15 miles away in a riverside town. Harper writes freelance travel articles and believes conflict can always be reduced to miscommunication. She urged me to invite the HOA board for coffee and talk it out. Maybe they think you're someone else. I'd rather invite a swarm of yellow jackets, I said, but agreed to attempt diplomacy for her peace of mind. I emailed the president proposing a meeting at the edge of my property. Neutral ground. Silas replied within minutes, "Our policy requires initial meetings at the HOA clubhouse. Tuesday 9 a.m., please bring $600 entrance fee and 2 forms of ID." That settled diplomacy. Attorney Briscoe's office smelled of leather and spearmint. He skimmed the certified notice, then chuckled. "I handled a similar case last spring. There's a doctrine called non-existent covenants. You can't contract with someone who never signed. We'll send a cease and desist and file a quiet title action if needed. Will that stop the fines?" Fines? He scribbled something obscenely large on a legal pad. "If they've clouded your title, we counterclaim for slander of title and seek damages. Easier if they trespass. I suspect they will. Place trail cams and buy a no trespassing posted sign with your parcel number. Under state law, that turns any entry into criminal trespass." I left his office feeling like I'd strapped on armor. That night it rained, a warm southern storm that hammered the tin roof of my storage shed. I lay in my canvas tent, listening to frogs over the thunder, wondering if the HOA would really risk criminal charges. The answer arrived at dawn. Tire tracks across my easterly meadow, muddy boot prints leading to the flagged site where my workshop foundation would go. A laminated violation notice flapped on a stake. "Stop work, pending HOA approval." The camera nailed them, 3 individuals in polo shirts, clipboards in hand, posing like they owned the place. One was Silas himself, wide-shouldered with slicked-back hair and mirrored aviators, the type who probably narrated his high school football glories at every barbecue. I emailed Briscoe the images. He responded with a single word: jackpot. The next 7 days played like a montage. Briscoe fired off letters citing trespass, demanded rescission of the fines, and threatened to sue individual board members. Silas retaliated with thicker packets of amended covenants. The fines ballooned to $5,000. They claimed authority under something called a protective expansion easement. Briscoe laughed so hard he wheezed. Subplot number 3 surfaced when Harper attended a neighborhood yoga class in town and overheard 2 women bragging about bringing rogue parcels under control. They mentioned my name. Harper, 5'2" but fearless, confronted them. They dismissed her concerns and suggested I move if I can't follow the rules. She recorded the exchange on her phone. Evidence, Briscoe said, of malicious intent. Meanwhile, Dex kept me grounded. He helped install new trail cams and even borrowed a game warden's radar gun to clock vehicles entering the dead-end road. "You can't win a war if you don't know when the enemy sneaks around," he declared, eyes twinkling. On Friday, I lined my driveway with fresh gravel and posted a bright yellow sign. "Private property. Access by written permission only. Trespassers will be prosecuted." Saturday evening, headlights crawled down the lane. I killed the campfire lantern and watched from the tree line. A black SUV idled at my gate. 2 men in polo shirts hopped out, unlatched the chain, and drove onto my soil. They taped another violation notice to the oak tree and retreated. Camera flash captured every move. Sunday morning, I took the flash drive to the sheriff's department. Deputy Loring had a drooping mustache and the patience of a grandfather teaching chess. He viewed the footage, jotted a few notes, and nodded. "That's criminal trespass, 3rd degree. Want to press charges?" "Yes," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. He filed the paperwork and told me Silas would receive a summons. That afternoon, I received an email titled "Final Opportunity for Compliance." Silas accused me of harassment, claimed the sheriff's department belonged to the HOA's security committee, laughable, and promised a lien on my property by month's end. I forwarded it to Briscoe, who replied that we'd file the quiet title action Monday. Now the bigger picture came into focus. Oak Grove Meadows wasn't just power tripping. They were drowning in unpaid debts. Public records revealed the association had borrowed against future assessments to fund a fancy pool and fitness center. They needed new members, especially ones with acreage, to widen their assessment base. My land was a lifeline, and I was the stubborn plug. Briscoe and I formulated a plan that Dex called my reverse chokehold. We'd petition the county zoning board to reclassify my tract as agricultural timberland, exempting it from residential covenants altogether. Simultaneously, we'd file for a declaratory judgment that Oak Grove Meadows had no interest in my title. The zoning board hearings were public. That meant Silas had to argue under oath why my forest belonged in his manicured suburbia. I looked forward to the spectacle like a front-row seat at a fireworks show. I spent the next week documenting every species of tree, bird, and wildflower on my property. Harper helped photograph deer tracks and owl nests. Dex operated a drone for aerial footage. We compiled a binder thicker than a phone book. Environmental groups wrote letters supporting my application. The county extension agent signed an affidavit attesting to my sustainable forestry plan. When the hearing date arrived, early May, pollen swirling like confetti, Silas strutted into the county chamber wearing a tailored blazer and a tie patterned with tiny oak leaves. His entourage of board members filled the front pew. I sat halfway back with Briscoe, Harper, and Dex, our evidence binders stacked like fortifications. The chairperson called the case. Silas took the podium first, arguing that permitting an unregulated landowner would devalue adjacent homes. He tried to paint me as a reckless hobby logger building shabby sheds. Then he introduced a glossy map marked in highlighter, claiming my tract lay within their buffer zone. He quoted paragraph after paragraph of the covenants. The zoning board members, faces blank, listened, but asked no questions. My turn. I approached the microphone wearing jeans and a canvas work shirt, deliberately casual. I thanked the board, handed them copies of my forestry plan, and played Dex's drone footage. Rolling green canopy, meandering deer, sunlight dappled across creek stones. Then I unveiled the timeline. Purchase, clear title, trespass incidents, deputy reports, pending quiet title. I quoted state statute. A homeowners association cannot expand boundaries without unanimous written consent of affected owners recorded with the county. Finally, I introduced Miss Pennington, the county recorder, who testified that no such consent existed. Silas's shoulders slumped and mutters spread among his board. The board deliberated for 15 minutes but felt like an hour. Then the chairperson announced my parcel would be rezoned as agricultural timberland, effective immediately. I could feel the oxygen return to the room the moment the gavel fell. Dex slapped my shoulder so hard the sound echoed. Harper squeezed my hand until our knuckles clicked. I'd won the first battle, but the war, quiet title, damages, and whatever petty plays Silas had left still lay ahead. Yet, as we stepped into the sunshine, pollen sparkling in the beams like celebratory glitter, I knew one thing. Oak Grove Meadows had underestimated the stubborn owner at the dead end of the county road, and that mistake was about to cost them dearly. And for the first time since that yellow envelope showed up, I heard the forest breathe alongside me, as though the white pines themselves were rooting for my side. A fresh gust rustled their needles, scattering last year's cones across the path like tiny medals awarded after a long march. The message felt clear. Hold the line, keep your ground. There's still more story to write. The zoning victory felt like a booster rocket, but rockets still have to clear gravity. Oak Grove Meadows hadn't burned out yet. They simply pivoted. 3 mornings after the hearing, I found a neon orange placard stapled to my front gate. Notice of violation, unpermitted commercial activity. It bore the county seal, yet the fine print listed as complainant, Oak Grove Meadows Compliance Committee. Silas had somehow convinced a junior code enforcement officer that my timber management plan meant I was running an unauthorized lumber mill. I drove to the county administrative building with photos of my untouched forest and a copy of the freshly minted agricultural rezoning. The senior officer, a tired-eyed woman named Miss Chu, apologized for the mix-up and shredded the notice in front of me. "Seems your neighbor association likes paperwork for sport," she said. That same afternoon, Briscoe filed the quiet title action. We served each board member individually. Dex insisted on accompanying the process server, riding shotgun like a proud uncle watching a school play. By dusk, Silas's elegant mailbox brimmed with summons envelopes like a magician's bouquet gone sour. Subplot number 4 arrived through an email with the subject line, "Please help." The sender, Carrie, claimed she was Oak Grove Meadows treasurer and wanted to talk, confidentially. We met at a diner off the highway where the smell of fry grease clung to vinyl seats like nostalgia. Carrie looked worn, dark circles under her eyes. She slid a thumb drive across the table. "Our president's cooking the books," she whispered. "He's paying contractors that don't exist, money disappearing. I didn't sign up for fraud." I ordered 2 coffees, handed one to her shaky hands, and asked if she was willing to testify. She nodded. "I'm resigning tonight. But you should know, Silas plans to put a lien on your land anyway. He thinks if he scares you long enough, you'll pay just to make it stop. Harper helped me scan the drive that evening. Ledger after ledger showed inflated landscaping costs, duplicate invoices, and a mysterious consulting fee routed monthly to something called Oak Grove Development Partners, registered to a P.O. box. We forwarded the files to Briscoe, who nearly sang over the phone. "This tips everything," he said. "We counter for civil conspiracy and petition for a forensic audit." Silas responded like a cornered badger. First came the lien notice, a single sheet taped to my gate because the clerk's office refused to record it. Next, HOA newsletters materialized in town, accusing me of deforestation, tax evasion, even wildlife harassment. One flyer featured a photoshopped image of me holding a chainsaw beside a cartoon crying squirrel. Harper, ever the storyteller, drafted an op-ed for the local weekly paper titled, "When a Neighborhood Association Becomes a Bully." She kept it factual, cited statutes, and included quotes from Miss Pennington and Deputy Loring. The newspaper ran it on the front page of the Sunday edition. By Monday, 3 other outlying landowners emailed me saying Oak Grove Meadows had pulled similar stunts on them. Suddenly, we were a class, not a lone defendant. Dex suggested a town hall meeting at the VFW hall. 40 people showed up: farmers, retirees, a beekeeper, 2 school teachers. Briscoe explained quiet title in plain language, then introduced Carrie, who detailed the bookkeeping mess. Phones recorded everything, someone live-streamed it. Within hours, screenshots hit social media. Hashtags sprouted, #StopOakGroveGrab, and less creatively, #SilasTheMenace. Pressure cooked fast. County commissioners announced an audit of HOA finances. The sheriff scheduled extra patrols near Oak Grove Meadows after anonymous tips about document shredding. The state attorney general's office opened an inquiry into patterns of predatory covenant claims. Silas tried damage control, emailing board members that anyone speaking to the opposition would face lawsuits for breach of fiduciary duty. 2 directors quit anyway. Mary Beth, the laminated quote receptionist, posted a resignation letter online confessing that Silas had ordered her to backdate violation notices. Meanwhile, discovery for the quiet title suit proceeded. Briscoe deposed Silas in a conference room lined with law books. I attended, silent but savoring. Under oath, Silas squirmed as Briscoe displayed Carrie's ledgers and asked how a homeowners association could pay $83,000 to consultants without board approval. Silas claimed ignorance, then privilege, then said the invoices were prepaid landscaping studies. His lawyer called for a recess every 10 minutes. The transcript reads like a sputtering engine. That night, someone egged Dex's mailbox and spray-painted "Rule Breaker" on my trailhead sign. Deputy Loring chalked it up to vandalism, but Harper insisted we install motion sensor lights. I added another trail cam, infrared this time, high up in the crook of a tulip poplar. 2 days later, it caught a culprit. Silas's teenage nephew, hoodie pulled low, wielding a can of paint. The deputy picked him up. The family had to scrub the sign clean under Dex's watchful eye. The harassment backfired. Local opinion swung hard. A bakery put up a sidewalk chalkboard, 10% off for property rights defenders. The high school civics teacher invited me to speak about land deeds. I brought Harper, who turned the session into a lively quanda about investigative writing. Subplot number 5 weaves in now. Dex's dream of turning part of his land into a wedding venue. He'd built a charming open-air pavilion but needed a conditional use permit. Oak Grove Meadows lodged a protest, claiming increased traffic would disturb their tranquil environment. When the Planning Commission held its hearing, I testified on Dex's behalf, pointing out that Oak Grove Meadows did not own or govern any access roads. The commission approved Dex's permit unanimously. The first wedding, his daughter's, was set for late June. Dex invited me to be best man. I tried to protest, but he said, "You're already fighting dragons with me. Might as well carry the ring." Weeks rolled by, bringing the quiet title trial date into view. Silas's lawyer filed motion after motion to delay, all denied. The judge, a brisk woman with no patience for theatrics, scheduled start for the second Monday of July. The weekend before trial, Harper and I camped beside the creek that separates my land from county forest. Fireflies embroidered the darkness while coyotes sang backup. Harper said softly, "After this is over, will you finally build that workshop, the one you kept sketching?" "I will," I answered, realizing I had postponed dreams while playing defense. "And maybe a tiny cabin for us." She smiled, the campfire reflecting in her eyes. Trial morning cracked hot and humid. Courtroom B smelled of fresh paint and coffee. A handful of reporters set up near the back. Dex, Carrie, Miss Pennington, and even Miss Chu sat in the gallery. Silas wore a dark suit and carried a thick binder he never opened, as though heft alone could sway the judge. Briscoe's opening statement was a masterclass. Clear chain of title, lack of recorded covenants, documented trespass, attempted fraudulent lien. He quoted a 2019 state appellate case establishing that HOAs cannot unilaterally annex property. Silas's lawyer countered with talk of planned community vision and implied easements, but the judge's raised eyebrow suggested she'd heard better bedtime stories. Over 2 days, we paraded evidence. Trail cam footage, deputy reports, zoning rulings, Carrie's ledgers. Carrie testified, voice steady. When Briscoe asked why she came forward, she said, "Because stewardship means protecting neighbors, not exploiting them." Silas took the stand last. Under cross-examination, he admitted the association never recorded expansion covenants. He tried to claim an oral agreement with the original developer, but the judge cut him off. Oral covenants cannot override recorded deeds. The courtroom grew so quiet I could hear Silas swallow. By late afternoon, the judge ruled from the bench. Quiet title granted. Oak Grove Meadows permanently enjoined from claiming any interest in my property. She referred the evidence of financial misconduct to the state's fraud division and ordered the HOA to pay my attorney fees plus statutory damages for slander of title. Silas's face drained of color. The reporter's pen scratched furiously. Outside, sunlight bore down like a benediction. Dex lifted me in a bear hug. Harper kissed me full on the lips while cameras clicked. Freedom felt electric, buzzing in my fingertips. But the story wasn't quite over. 2 weeks later, investigators raided the HOA clubhouse. They carted out boxes of records and seized computers. Local news aired footage of Silas in handcuffs, charged with embezzlement and wire fraud. The community elected a new interim board that voted to dissolve Oak Grove Meadows and distribute remaining funds back to homeowners. Harper and I attended Dex's daughter's wedding beneath twinkle lights strung across the pavilion. During the toasts, Dex raised his glass toward me. "To neighbors who stand their ground," he said, voice thick with emotion. The crowd echoed the sentiment. As the bride and groom danced under the stars, Harper leaned against my shoulder. "Can we finally switch from defense to offense? Build something?" The next morning, we marked out the footprint of my workshop with bright orange tape. Dex brought his tractor. Harper held the measuring wheel. The forest watched, quiet and approving. We broke ground at sunrise, the first shovel bite tasting like victory. The first timber post for my workshop went up on a hazy July morning. Dragonflies patrolling the air like tiny sentries. Dex handled the auger while Harper steadied each beam. Each thunk of the mallet felt like sealing another chapter closed, but paperwork still trailed us like a persistent mosquito. Injury to be collected, loose ends to be tied. Briscoe, ever meticulous, filed the motion for attorney fee reimbursement and damages the judge had already granted verbally. Oak Grove Meadows, what remained of it, had a liability insurance policy that kicked in the moment the fraud unit slapped charges on Silas. The interim board's new counsel called Briscoe within days, voice heavy with contrition, proposing a global settlement, reimburse my legal costs, pay modest punitive damages, and issue a written public apology to every landowner the previous board had harassed. Briscoe asked my opinion. I told him I wanted something more creative than a line in a newspaper. Make them put their apology on a billboard at the entrance to the old subdivision for 6 months, I suggested. He chuckled but drafted it verbatim into the settlement terms. Astonishingly, they agreed. 2 weeks later, a 20-foot sign appeared. White letters on forest green. Oak Grove Meadows recognizes the lawful property rights of tract owners and apologizes for prior misconduct. Every commuter on the county highway read it twice a day. Silas, meanwhile, cooled his heels in county custody, pending trial for embezzlement and wire fraud. The prosecutor announced additional counts for insurance fraud after finding that Oak Grove Development Partners was a shell used to siphon assessment money. His bail hearing was brief. The judge cited risk of flight and denied release. Word filtered through that he'd cut a plea deal. 5 years in state prison, restitution to the HOA, and a ban on serving on any non-profit board for a decade. In the end, justice wore practical work boots instead of fancy loafers. Carrie, relieved of treasurer duty, accepted a position with the county auditor's office, where her newfound whistleblower reputation became a badge of honor rather than a black mark. She occasionally emailed me updates. The HOA dissolution process was nearly complete, and most homeowners favored reorganizing as a voluntary neighborhood association with zero enforcement teeth. Lesson learned. Dex's daughter's wedding kicked off a brisk little side business. Couples loved the rustic pavilion, the fieldstone fire ring, the chorus of peepers at dusk. By autumn, Dex had 12 bookings on the calendar. He insisted I take a cut for helping defend the permit. I declined, so he started leaving jars of wildflower honey on my porch instead. My pantry shelves glowed amber. With legal hostilities settled, Harper and I turned to the cabin. We sketched floor plans during campfire nights, 12 by 20 footprint, sleeping loft, big south-facing windows. The county's tiny home code was friendly once you had agricultural zoning. No HOA design review committee to dictate shingle color or ban clotheslines. We sourced rough-cut cedar from a sawmill 30 miles north and spent every spare weekend stacking tongue and groove boards until the frame smelled like a cedar chest the size of a church. During one late September afternoon as we hoisted roof rafters, the familiar crunch of tires sounded. Deputy Loring's cruiser eased up the drive, but instead of a call-out, he delivered a grin and an envelope. "Thought you'd appreciate the closure," he said, handing me certified copies of the civil judgment. Each original Oak Grove Meadows board member jointly liable for damages. Even better, the judge had tacked on individual statutory penalties for the unlawful lien attempt. Dex happened to walk up just then, wiping sweat with a bandana. "What's the grand total?" "Enough to pay for this roof in cash and maybe a solar array," I said after scanning the figure. Harper suggested we put part of it towards something the community could touch. "Turn their mess into something good," she said. The idea took root. We'd establish an easement along the creek as a public walking trail, open dawn to dusk, posted with educational placards about local flora and sustainable forestry. The trail would pass through my land and Dex's, then circle back along the county forest boundary. Briscoe drafted the easement language gratis, his thank you for a case that had boosted his reputation mightily. County commissioners approved the trail unanimously, seeing it as free recreation infrastructure. Opening day arrived mid-October. Crisp air carried wood smoke from distant chimneys. We strung a length of biodegradable ribbon between two young maples. The interim HOA president, one of the newer, reform-minded homeowners, attended and cut the ribbon beside Harper. A local kid strummed acoustic guitar while families strolled the path, pausing to read signs about beech bark disease and barred owl nesting habits. I walked caboose, letting the chatter drift ahead. Carrie's 8-year-old son trotted back to tug my sleeve. "Mr. T?" he asked. "Is this forest yours?" "It belongs to all of us today," I said, gesturing to the trail. He nodded solemnly, as though entrusted with a secret. Winter crept in, ushering the kind of stillness that makes snow squeak like styrofoam. The cabin roof gathered its first tooth-white blanket in December. On the solstice, Harper and I sat inside by the pot-bellied stove. Just the two of us, no lawyers, no certified mail, only the pop of resin in cedar boards. She unrolled a small blueprint sheet, a future garden plot, a chicken coop, maybe bees like Dex's. I realized we'd moved from defending ground to dreaming into it. January delivered one final coda. A neatly typed letter arrived from Silas, mailed from state prison. No apology, more a thinly veiled complaint that the settlement had ruined him, followed by a request that I write the parole board when the time came. I folded it once and fed it to the stove. Some fires deserve no fuel. Spring brought pastel green tips to every branch. The trail thrummed with wood thrush songs and the occasional school field trip. One afternoon, Miss Pennington walked the loop and stopped by the cabin bearing a homemade cherry pie. She said the county deed office now used our case in staff training, how to spot fraudulent covenants before they wasted a landowner's year. Harper sold a travel feature about micro-forestry getaways, showcasing our off-grid cabin. Her byline gained traction in bigger magazines, and editors asked for a follow-up on rural land use battles. "I know a guy," she joked in emails. 4th of July dawned bright, and Dex suggested hosting the town picnic on my clearing since the subdivision's former common green was fenced off for auditing. Families arrived with folding chairs and potluck dishes. We grilled venison burgers and watermelon wedges. At dusk, kids chased fireflies while adults watched fireworks bloom over the county lake, faint booms rolling across distance. No one mentioned HOAs. Nobody needed to. The story had settled into local lore, one told over coffee refills and hardware store counters, a cautionary tale with a satisfying punchline. As for me, I finished the workshop by late August. Sturdy pine trusses, skylights rescued from an estate auction, big rolling barn doors that swallow whole sheets of plywood. Inside, sawdust drifts in golden beams and tools hang on French cleats like well-behaved soldiers. On the back wall, I framed a copy of the quiet title Judgment. Not gloating, just reminder. Some evenings I stand at the threshold, looking out toward the trail entrance where the billboard once loomed. The sign is gone now. Contract fulfilled. Grass covers the post holes. If you didn't know the saga, you'd never guess what nearly happened here. But I remember. I remember every phone call, every bogus fine, every tire track across dew-wet meadow. And I remember the counter-moves. Letters, drone footage, courtroom truths, neighbors stepping up. The forest stands because people stood tall. One autumn night, 1 year to the week after the first yellow envelope, Harper and I brewed coffee on the wood stove and sat on the porch rail watching Orion climb. She rested her head on my shoulder and murmured, "Worth it?" I thought of Dex's booming laugh, the creekside trail filled with school kids, Carrie's fresh start, the glow inside the workshop when afternoon sun hits shavings just right. Every last minute, I said. The breeze sifted through white pines, sounding like applause fading into silence. A barred owl called once, then again, claiming its territory with no committee's permission. Friends, thank you. See you soon.